Let me explain. Hey guys, it's Beer here. Now, I know the title is a little bit drastic and it's a little more reasonable here, but you know, you gotta do the YouTube thing. But today I want to talk about why I think we should catch up to the Japanese set releases. So, there's no real way for me to open this without really jumping into why I think these things need to be changed, or why we should catch up. So before we actually jump into the topic, guys, I do stream every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Digimon guaranteed every Thursday and on tournament weekends. So if you guys want to catch me live, links will be down in the description. But with that said, let's just jump right into the topic. What's the state of our world, right? Well, in the West, we're getting the release of set 1.5 in February. We are getting set 1.0 in January, but that's not typical cycle. I'm looking at set releases for what the typical cycle we're supposed to expect once we start getting into a regular set releases, like we're going to see in set 4, where we're getting that in May. Now, so this is a very standard release window, you know, roughly 3 months or every quarter, we get a new core set. Very typical here. When we compare to what we're getting in Japan, we're looking at the release of set 5 in February, so about the time we're getting set 1.5, and then they're probably getting the release of set 6 in May. From the looks of how the releases have worked in Japan up until now, it looks like it's going to work in the same cadence. They just happen to be a few sets ahead. So if we're talking about us getting BT4 in May and Japan probably getting BT6 themselves, what we're looking at is about 2 sets worth, or 6 months, give or take, or 2 quarters behind Japan when we're comparing what we're getting in the West. That's a tough pill for me to swallow. One, because I believe in the global state of the game and I think it'd be great, and I understand why we're behind. I think it's important for Bandai to be able to test the waters in the West, see if the card game is viable out here, which I think it is. I think it's selling really well, but it is just the first set pre-release. We'll see if that momentum sticks. But one of the biggest things that I was really excited about when we got announcements for set 1.0 and set 1.5 is okay, our first 3 sets are just going to be catch-up sets where we're getting a bunch of cards and we're able to really power through and catch up to Japan so that we just have a global card game eventually. From the looks of it, it does seem that release BT4 does break that previous trend where it seems like we're just going to be falling into a regular rotation of the sets, which kind of is a bummer for me. And there's lots of reasons why. So let's just jump into why I think this is a problem. First, I think it kills a certain amount of hype. In terms of what we're supposed to expect from a card set, now we're not, you know, just looking ahead 6 months ahead of time. We basically have a nearly 10 months to a year outlook on what we're supposed to getting. We're already getting spoilers for set 5 and they look awesome, by the way. The cards look sick, sweet, and I'm excited about them. But that's the thing, I'm excited for set 5. We're getting set 1.5 and I'm very looking forward to the fact that that's going to change at the minute game, and I'm excited to play with physical cards in terms of what set 1.5 brings. But in terms of like, oh my god, we're getting this, I'm already hyped up for what Blue can do in set 5, more so than what Blue can do for me in 1.5 and in set 4 because of the cards we've already seen. So in just on hype perspective, I think it really mitigates it when now I'm not just waiting 6 months for a set, or even less given the spoilers. Season 4 Bandai is typically a month or 2 before release. Now what I'm looking into is like over 6 months of me knowing what the format's going to look like and then just kind of waiting along. And that's one of the things where it projects power creep, which I actually don't think is that hard of a neg, but it goes into, you know what, we already know what everything's going to look like. You know, Omnimon's a problem right now, I would say. I think it's at a level where I'd say it's a problem. It's a tier 0 deck based on population size in the format. I think things can beat Omnimon, and we've seen green decks do well, we've seen purple decks do well. I'm not saying Omnimon can't be beat, but I'm saying in terms of population size for the game, it should be considered a tier 0 deck. But we already know that with set 1.5, Omnimon's not a problem, because other decks get a bunch of added stuff to their consistency, their power level, which puts it on par or even better than Omnimon itself. And this is my biggest point, the biggest reason why I think it's a problem that we're behind. And the meta is cracked for us. You know, it was no surprise when we got set 1.0 that Omnimon was going to be best deck. And if anyone told you otherwise, then they just weren't paying attention to what was happening in Japan. It was very clear that Omnimon was going to be best deck. So, okay, well, what about next set, right? You know, it's a mix match. Next set, 1.5 puts us basically where set 3 was in Japan. Well, you know what? Shine Greymon is actually really, really good. And shocker, who would have thunk? But we have things like Shine Greymon. So we know that in contention, we have this, we have Red Omni, we have Green Ceresmon. And mind you, these are decks I've never even played. I've just seen them being played, and I've seen the meta breakdowns, and I understand that these are going to be the powerhouses of the next set, which means that we don't really have a chance to be able to figure things out. And that even includes, you know, sets that we're not getting for even more down the pipeline. Set 4 looks amazing. But you know what's a pretty good deck? Looks like Loosemon is a pretty good card, and it's going to be included in a bunch of decks like Anubismon and such. So this is where my big core of the problem is. I'm a competitive player at heart, but I'm also a community player. I love when a new set comes out and I'm part of that wave of figuring out what's new, what's interesting. You know, I get excited by saying, can I break the meta? Can I try this new spice? Can I do this Y and Z? And we do see some of that. Because of the varying playstyles of different regions. You know, I think when we're talking, let's say Europe, they're a very value-based type of players. They like their value decks. When we're looking at Asia, typically, and I'm comparing from like MTG and other games here, but when we're looking at, like, say Asia, they're very control-oriented, combo-oriented players. And here in North America, we typically lean more aggressive. But that doesn't change the fact that for these very high-level powerful decks, it's already been cracked for us. You know, we know what the meta is going to look like. We know that, you know, set 1.5 is going to be Shine Greymon, Ceresmon, Red Omni, and then a splash of Imperial Dramon here and there. We know that Loosemon is going to be a huge player in the next set, not only just because we know the card, but because we have decks and we actually have tournaments running that can show us what the metagame breakdowns are. And that's the biggest sad factor for me. It's a shame that unless I'm playing online simulators, which, like, I want to play with field cards and real people, and I want to play my metagame. I don't want to play the future metagame. That I don't get to explore and figure out everything that has to do with the game with everyone else. Instead, we just kind of get the trickle-down effect from Japan. Now, do I think it's an end-all be-all? No, but it definitely is a shame that we don't get to go through that discovery period. Already, we playtest sets before they come out. Whether in Dragon Ball, oftentimes we get spoilers about a month ahead of time, a month and a half, which means by the time the set actually releases, between every single online simulator that there is, most people are already either acquainted to or have played plenty of the new set and understand, oh, hey, what's going to be, what's going to not be good. There's no official tournaments, which means typically there's no meta that's defined, but in terms of power level, that's already there. So we're already doing that. So not only do we have accelerated staleness with the next set we're getting, but we have an ability to have accelerated staleness like 4 sets ahead, you know? So especially talking today, we're getting set 5 spoilers. So in that regard, it's causing that position where I'm already playing set 4 games. I'm already playing potentially set 5 games come the next month once all the spoilers are out. So it really accelerates the whole notion that, you know, the game is going to get stale quicker. Now, this is something I could mitigate by not playing that much. And to be honest, I really don't play all that much of the future sets because I do want to keep it fresh. I want to focus on what the West archetype looks like. And I want to keep getting better at what the game looks like today versus what the game is going to look like. But it is still a factor that if you want to, you can play these formats months at a time before they ever, one, get official English translations, which, by the way, some of the cards here were translated by the DigiDev guys. So links will be in the description. Those guys are amazing. But it's just... It's a tough place to be in because I want to be excited about the card game, and I am excited about the card game, and I see stuff in the new sets, and that's amazing. But it's one of those things where by the time it gets into our hands, we'll already know what everything looks like. And finally, it sets up for Worlds. What's Worlds going to look like? We do know that Bandai is interested in setting up Worlds for their tournament. 2020 was going to be the first Worlds for Dragon Ball. And I believe that they want to take that hype and that kind of push and really take it into Digimon as well. So I wouldn't be shocked for them to want to set that up. So does Worlds have its own unique format that's kind of a mesh of both? Do we adapt to the Japanese format, but because we don't have the cards, Japanese players will have to play our format? Or are we just going to have 2 separate World circuits? Not the biggest factor, to be honest. For me, cracking the meta is like the biggest thing, but it's one of those things to consider if we want the longevity of this game and its growth to keep going, right? What is Worlds going to look like? So when we look over the fence, how do other card games mitigate for this? Well, Yu-Gi-Oh does a really great job at this by having a unique metagame in a couple of aspects, actually. So they have TCG exclusive archetypes. So the one that comes to mind right away is Thunder Dragons. That wasn't in the OCG. It's a TCG exclusive, which means that the game looks different. There's a strong tier 1 level archetype that forces the game to be completely different from where you're seeing it before because the card pool just inherently is different. And that was kind of cool about the set 1.0 format. it's a card pool that never existed in any format in Japan. So it was very much our own, and which allowed us to really distinctify ourselves from what BT1 looked like in Japan. It was our own unique format. On top of, there's no tied release schedule. Oftentimes when I'm watching Yu-Gi tubers talk, they're saying, oh, hey, so there's this new sweet card that the OCG is getting. Who knows when we'll get into TCG? And it really shows that sets are shaped and formed differently for the Western world than it is for the OCG, which is great in its own way, because one, it does suck that you don't get a tied release schedule, so you don't know when you're going to get something. But there is the benefit that the meta will be different based on the fact that the card game pool is just different. If we look over at Pokemon, Pokemon was really hard for me to really lock down on how specifically they do this. But the way I believe it works is that the Pokemon Company International and the Japanese and Asian Pokemon Company are run separately. So there's a non-standard rotation in the English world that isn't tied necessarily to what you're going to see in Japan. So once again, creating a unique metagame that is not strictly tied to what they see in Japan. And this really boils down to the fact that these are unique metagames. These are distinct card pools that we're able to figure out from and crack the meta ourselves and really figure out how everything comes together in our own way. I think we already do some of that by the fact that different regions play the card game differently. I've already spoken about this, how North American players lean more aggressive or they lean more meta than other areas. But at the end of the day, the top decks are going to be the top decks. And the fact that I already know what the top deck is going to look like for set 4 before we're even in a set 3 meta is kind of a bummer. And it would really, I think it would really be thrilling if we were eventually caught up and part of the excitement with Japan. And that's not never been done, right? In terms of the Dragon Ball card game, at one point, Bandai took the stride to say, hey, we're going to push ourselves in Europe to catch up to the rest of the world. And there were some bumps. Distribution-wise, there were bumps. Set releases were really quick, and I think it's really tough for a lot of players' wallets. But I think that was a necessary evil to get them on par with the rest of the world. And now we have a unified card game globally, which I think is absolutely amazing, because now, you know, we're not stuck in our own little bubble. When we're talking about the metagame and what's going to look like, we can include France players, Spanish players. We can include people from South America too. Latam, huge community there for card games. And I think they'd be awesome to also include in all of this. And I think having us unified with Japan would ease a lot of issues I have in regards to having a cracked metagame and all the other aspects. For me, the biggest part is the metagame, but all the other aspects as well. You know I was rambling quite a bit. This is more of a plea and a wish list. Do I think the game is gonna die if we're not caught up? No. There are card games that have games ahead of them, and though they have factors in them that make the Western releases of those games unique, they're still doing fine, and there are some that just do direct to Japan and they do fine as well. I think the card game is a ton of fun. I am actually super thrilled for 1.5, and I'm really looking forward to changing up our set 1.0 meta. It would just be nice if that was from a fresh pair of eyes and not ones that already have sight to the future and understand that, hey, you know what, I want to build a good deck. Well, it turns out Shine Greymon, Ceresmon, and Omni Red are pretty good decks. So these are just things to consider, and this is why this is my case for hopefully why I think we should catch up to Japan. So I hope, so all in all, I hope this wasn't all dread and doom as like the thumbnail and title of the video probably suggests it is, but I think it's an important topic to open up, talk about. And I know that there've been mention about it and people thought we were catching up, and then it was pretty much confirmed that we weren't catching up. But I think it's an important dialogue to have, because I think if we had a global unified card game, it would long-term benefit the game much more so than hurt it. With that said, what do you guys think on the topic? Do you guys think we should catch up? Do you guys think it's just fine the way it is? Do you guys not care? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like videos, give it a thumbs up. If you dislike it, give it a thumbs down. And if you want to catch more of my videos, I do tons of these discussion videos, deck lists, tournament reports for Digimon, and even other card games if you're interested in that. Subscribe button's down in the corner. And with that said, I'll catch you guys on the next one.